pleasant day to each and every one of you, Tourism Management students. Welcome to Tourism Management Elective 3, Ecotourism. This is Ma'am Ara Venise Ocampo, your instructor in Ecotourism class. For today's lesson, we are going to talk about ecotourism and ecotourists. But before that, let me just reiterate to you the learning objectives. After reading this module or after you watch the lesson video, you should be able to, number 1, define ecotourism based on different routes and authors. Number 2, describe ecotourism and nature-based tourism. Number 3, describe wildlife tourism and adventure tourism. And number 4, reiterate the types of ecotourists. So now let's begin discussing the ecotourism and ecotourist. It says here that there is what we called ecotourism roots. Until recently, there has been some confusion surrounding the etymology or the origin of the term ecotourism, as an evident in tremendous volume of literature on the topic. So when we say the word ecotourism, it means these are the study of origin of the words and the way in which those meanings have been changed throughout the history. So ito yung sinasabi natin na yung pinanggalingan ng isang term or ng isang word kung saan lahat sila is nagbago throughout the change of history or the generation. It says here that one of the consistent themes emergent in the literature supports that the fact that Ceballos Lascurain was first to coin the phrase in 1980s. So as mentioned last time in our discussion, that ecotourism is defined as the traveling to unrelatively undisturbed or uncontaminated natural areas with a specific objective of studying, admiring, enjoying the scenery and its wildlife, plants, and animals, as well as any existing cultural manifestation, both past and present, found in this area. So basically, when we say ecotourism, we are going to immerse ourselves in the undisturbed and uncontaminated natural areas. And when we go to that specific places, meron tayong mga specific objectives. And that is to study, to admire, and to enjoy the sceneries of the what we called flora and fauna. So when we say flora, these are the plants, and when we called fauna, these are the animals or the life of the animals. Next one is, apparently, however, the term has been traced further back to the work of Hetzer, who used to explain the intricate relationship between tourists and the environments, and of course, the culture. So, we have to bear in mind that in ecotourism, there is an intricate, when we say intricate, there is a combination of relationship between the tourists, the environment, and the cultures. So in that way, those three terms are being connected. So it means meron silang interaction with one another. Next one is, there is a 4 fundamental pillars according to Hetzer. So this needs to be the term na dapat nating sundin, the pillars or the basis or the principles that we must follow in order for us to form a responsible tourism. Number 1 is minimum environmental impact. So in ecotourism, as mentioned earlier, we are going to travel in a undisturbed and unrelative areas. So in that case, kung yung isang area na yon is never seen before pa siya, ngayon lang siya na-discover, it means that we need to lessen, we need to minimize those negative environmental impacts. So in that case, mamapanatili natin yung isang lugar into its sustainable form. Ibig sabihin, we might use the resources, we can use the resources, but hindi natin siya masisira. Ibig sabihin, yung resources na gagamitin natin, pwede pa rin siyang magamit ng mga future generations. Number 2 is minimum impact on and maximum respect for the host culture. So ano ba yung sinasabi natin dito na host culture? So when we say host culture, these are the people involved in a community. Okay? These are the most dominant culture that lives in a given area. So itong host culture na to, they are very sensitive sa nangyayari sa area nila. That's why when we travel to a certain destination, lalo na kung mga ecotourism sites yan, we must respect, okay, the traditions, the beliefs, the way of life of those host culture, and even those indigenous people. Number 3 is maximum economic benefits. So ano ba yung sinasabi natin na economic benefits dito? So as we all know, one of the largest contributor to the economic growth of our country is the tourism industry. So in this case, we want to gain benefits in order for us to help our economy. So sabi nga dito, the wealth that tourism brings into an area can be shared between the local population. So in that case, kapag na-share natin yung mga economic benefits na yon, matutulungan natin yung community. So in that case, pag natulungan natin yung community, we can even develop yung better roads, okay? Mga daanan na de-develop siya, yung water supplies within the ecotourist sites, and of course, later on, magkakaroon ng improvement sa mga infrastructures or sa mga buildings. And number 4, maximum recreational satisfaction. So in this case, sa ecotourism, naka-involve din dito si wildlife tourism, si adventure tourism, at si nature-based tourism. So in this case, marami tayong mga recreational activities na pwedeng gawin in order for us to be immersed in a given situation or in a given location. So in this case, meron talagang 100% participation yung mga tourist. Okay, next slide. Nelson suggests that the term eco-development was introduced as a means by which to reduce improper, okay? So it says here, reduce improper use of the resources in the development. So, ibig sabihin, when we say eco-development, we are giving attention to the adequate and rational use of na natural resources. Ibig sabihin, kung yan naman is hindi mahalaga, okay, walang kapaki-pakinabang sa environment, dapat hindi na natin siya gamitin. Okay? Baka kasi ang mangyari, magkaroon ito ng negative impact sa ating environment, which later on mag-cause ng problem sa mga future generation. So, ine-emphasize lang dito ni Nelson that there should be a proper use, okay? Reduce the improper use of the resources. Kailangan maayos natin gamitin yung ating mga resources, particularly yung ating mga natural resources. Next one is the ecotourism and the nature-based tourism. So, for example, it says here, Larman and Durst, in their early reference to ecotourism, dinefine nila yung ecotourism as a nature tourism, in which the traveler is drawn to a destination and because of his or her interest in one or more features of that destination which corresponds to the natural history. So, sinasabi lang dito ni Larman and ni Durst that a particular traveler, okay, tayong mga turista, when we go to a nature-based tourism, we are being immersed. Okay? Ibig sabihin, yung ating attention is being drawn to a particular attraction. Nagkakaroon tayo ng nami-mesmerize tayo sa ganda ng location, sa ganda ng site na yon. And of course, nakukuha ng site na yon or ng destination na yon yung interest ng mga turista. And of course, hindi lang yun nagtatapos doon. So, nandun din yung natural history. Okay? Yung mga historical backgrounds na nakukuha natin or nalalaman natin in a particular location or site. So, of course, sa tulong ng mga tour guides. So, sabi ni Larman and ni Durst, the visit combines education, recreation, and often adventure, which later on, mas maidi-discuss pa natin siya. Next one is we have the so-called deep ecotourism and the shallow ecotourism. So ano ba yung pinagkaiba ng dalawa na to? When we say deep ecotourism, it is characterized according to the intrinsic value, small-scale development, community identity, community participation, and notion that materialism for its own sake is wrong. So ano ba yung sinasabi ni ecotourism or ni deep ecotourism? Basically, ang sinasabi dito sa deep ecotourism is yung pag-express natin ng tinatawag na ecocentrism. Okay? So, yung pag-express natin ng tinatawag na ecocentrism. So, ano ba yung sinasabi natin na ecocentrism? So, ecocentrism or ecocentric, it means we are giving value or importance sa ating environment. Okay? Hindi lang basta yung animals, yung mga plants, but also yung human beings. Okay? We are focused on the environment. That's why sinabi dito, yung deep ecotourism, naka-involve dito yung mga development, okay? Yung community identity, yung community participation. And then, yung materialism dito is very wrong. Ibig sabihin, we don't want to utilize those resources na hindi na makikinabang yung future generation. So, if we are going to utilize, kung gagamitin natin yung mga resources na yon, we have to make sure na gagamitin natin siya sa tamang paraan. Next one is the shallow ecotourism. Shallow ecotourism, it is characterized by business as usual attitude to the natural world. Nature is seen as the resources to be exploited in maximizing the human benefits. Management decisions are based on the utilitarian reasoning, and sustainability is viewed from a weak or very weak perspective. So in this case, si shallow ecotourism, ang kanyang point of view is yung tinatawag na business as usual attitude. Okay? So in this kind of ecotourism, business is business. So, ang thinking dito or ang perception dito, okay lang kahit magkaroon ng abuse sa nature. So, which is wrong. Kaya nga, we need to implement yung tinatawag na deep ecotourism. Kasi sa shallow ecotourism, sabi dito, masyadong minamaximize yung exploitation, okay, ng mga human benefits. Yung human benefits, of course, kikita tayo. Okay? Magkakaroon tayo ng financial contribution. Okay? Kikita yung host community, pero ang backter naman niya, okay? O kaya naman yung kanyang balik is nagkakaroon ng exploitation sa nature. Okay? Ibig sabihin, nagiging exploited, naaabuso natin yung nature. And of course, dito sinasabi that sustainability is viewed from a weak or even very weak perspective. So, sa shallow ecotourism, hindi natin pinapractice yung tinatawag na sustainable tourism. Okay? Kaya nga dapat, mas i-implement natin yung tinatawag na deep ecotourism, which is may mas concern tayo sa environment and sa nature. Next one is, Wallace and Pierce suggest that tourism may be ecotourism if it is addresses the 6 key principles. So ano daw yung mga 6 key principles para matawag natin siyang ecotourism? So number 1, type of use that minimizes negative impacts. So nasabi na natin siya kanina. So we need to minimize the negative impacts sa environment at sa local people. Number 2, we need to increase the awareness and understanding of an area's natural and cultural system, and subsequent involvement of visitors in issues affecting those systems. So in ecotourism, there should be a high degree of awareness and understanding. We need to be aware, the tourist needs to be aware, the local community needs to be aware that those resources are limited. Okay? Yung mga resources na yan, they are not forever. Okay? Meron niyang limitation. Okay? Meron niyang hangganan lang. So, ibig sabihin, we need to make them understand that we need to take care properly yung mga resources na to. Number 3, conservation and management of legally protected and other natural areas. So sa tulong ng iba't ibang mga organizations, okay, katulad ng Department of Environment and Natural Resources, na i-conserve natin, na ipe-preserve natin at na ma-manage natin ng maayos yung mga natural areas na may kinalaman din of course sa law or sa legal aspects. Number 4, the early and long-term participation of local people in the decision-making process. So of course, in ecotourism sites, whether it is nature-based, wildlife, or adventure tourism, dapat merong participation yung mga local people. So yung mga tao within the area, kung meron man tayong gagawing mga development, dapat lahat po sila is involved. Okay? Meron silang participation when it comes sa decision-making process. Number 5, directing economic and other benefits to local people that complement rather than overwhelm or replace the traditional practices. So in this case, gusto natin manatili pa din yung mga trabaho ng mga local people. For example, yung pagsasaka, okay, pangingisda, or even yung social system or yung sistema within the society. Number 6, the provision of special opportunities for local people and nature tourism employees to utilize and visit natural areas and teach more about the wonders those other visitors come to see. So in this case, ecotourism gives special opportunities. So ano yung mga opportunities na yon? Of course, unang-una na dyan is yung employment opportunity para sa local people, sa mga indigenous people, and of course, nagkakaroon din tayo ng learnings once na naging employee tayo, na ibabahagi natin yung ating knowledge, yung learnings natin sa local employees natin, sa local people, and of course, sa ating mga turista. Next one is, according to Priest, he used the national or the Australian National Ecotourism Strategy definition of ecotourism. So, ginawa niya is, view niya yung ecotourism as a biodiversity and ecotourism, which is also one of the quite general in nature. So when we say biodiversity, these are all the living organisms, okay? The animals, the plants, and of course, the human beings. So the strategy defines ecotourism as a nature-based tourism that involves education, okay? That involves education and interpretation of the natural environment and is managed to be ecologically sustainable. So as you can see, medyo nag-overlap or pare-parehas yung mga definition ng iba't ibang authors with regards to ecotourism. So na-mention ulit dyan yung education and interpretation of the natural environment. Next one is, there is two examples served to illustrate this point. So ano daw ba yung gustong example na ibigay ni Priest in order for us to understand yung ecotourism? So sabi niya dito, responsible travel that conserves the environment and sustains the well-being of the local people. So dahil sobrang important nga na ma-conserve natin, na ma-preserve natin yung environment, sobrang importante din, okay, na masustain natin yung pamumuhay ng mga local people within the area. So yun din yung sinasabi sa pangalawa. Okay? So yung sinasabi sa pangalawa is yung conservation ng environment and yung welfare ng local people. Yung well-being and yung welfare. So dapat yun is ma-emphasize natin or bigyan natin ng importance. Next one is, according to Bottrill and Pierce, they found that only 5 were classified as the ecotourism using the following criteria. So, nandito yung motivation. So, sa motivation, nakapaloob dito yung mga physical activities, okay? Yung mga educational activities, and then yung participation ng mga turista. Number 2 is yung sensitive management. So, ano ba yung tinatawag na sensitive management? So, dito nakapaloob yung tinatawag na sensitivity training. So, ibig sabihin, nagkakaroon ng mga developmental techniques kung saan mas mai-increase natin yung well-being ng mga employees natin, mas tataas yung kanilang self-awareness, and of course, nagkakaroon sila ng sensitivity to nature and of course, to other people. Next one is protected area status. So, nakapaloob din yun sa tinatawag na classification of ecotourism or yung mga criterias na sinabi ni Bottrill and ni Pierce. So, another term na binanggit ni Valentin and Eagles. So, they suggested that ecotourists, okay, could be defined on the basis of an intention to learn about the nature and intention to visit the undisturbed areas. So, ibig sabihin dito, sinasabi ni Bottrill, okay, or sinasabi rather ni Valentin and ni Eagles that a particular ecotourist, magiging isang ecotourist ka lang kung meron kang intention, okay, na matuto about the nature. Okay? And of course, kung may intention ka na bisitahin yung mga undisturbed areas. So, pwede ka daw matawag na ecotourist. And at the same time, meron kang commitment within the area. That 33% of your time, okay, is meron kang attachment doon sa nabanggit na dalawang criteria. To learn about the nature and to visit the undisturbed areas. Next one is the wildlife tourism. So, ano ba yung sinasabi natin na wildlife tourism? So, it is defined by Higginbotham as tourism based on encounters with non-domesticated, non-human animals. Ibig sabihin, from the word itself, wildlife. So, ito yung mga animals na usually they are exotic, okay? Yung hindi inaalagaan na mga animals or hindi sila usually yung mga animals na pwede nating gawing pets, okay? So, yun yung tinatawag natin na wildlife. So, this includes wildlife watching tourism o yung tinatawag natin, example, yung mga free-ranging animals. So, ano ba yung mga free-ranging animals? So, these are the animals, okay, that have an access to outside area. Kaya nga tinawag na free range. Ibig sabihin, sila yung mga animals na pwede silang lumabas. Okay? And of course, there is no fixed rules about what period of the time has to be. So, example niyan, yung mga chickens, okay? Yung mga free-range chickens. Next one is yung captive wildlife tourism. So, dito naman, it says here that it is a man-made confinements like zoos, okay? Hunting and fishing tourism. So, ito naman usually yung mga animals na nakikita natin sa zoo, okay? Kaya naman yung mga animals na hinahunt, kaya naman yung mga fish, okay? Available for fish hunting. Next one is the 7 categories of wildlife tourism. So, ano-ano ba yung iba't ibang klase ng wildlife tourism? Number 1 is the nature-based tourism and wildlife component. So, as you can see in the picture, meron tayong tinatawag na incidental part. Ibig sabihin, yung nature-based tourism, nag-e-exist na talaga siya. Andyan na talaga siya. That's why, yung ibang mga tao, they are being totally immersed sa nature-based tourism. Because, malaki yung tendency na mas ma-relax yung ating mga isip because katabi natin is yung nature. May attachment tayo sa nature and sa wildlife. Number 2 is the locations with good wildlife viewing opportunities. So, dito naman, naka-include dito yung mga accommodation units that are located in the wildlife-rich habitat and also may attract wildlife through the provision of the food. So, for example nga, nagkakaroon ng sightseeing or close encounter dun mismo sa mga wildlife animals. O kaya naman, di ba, pwede natin pakainin ng mga grass yung giraffe, yung mga monkeys, na kung saan meron tayong interaction doon mismo sa mga animals. Number 3 is the artificial attraction. So, from the word itself, artificial attractions that is based on wildlife. So, ito yung mga human-made attraction, mga gawa ng tao, okay? Na wherein, ang ating focus pa din is yung mga animals. Number 4 is the specialist animal watching. So, this is for special interest groups, like for example, yung mga researchers, wherein meron silang particular agenda within the area. Okay? For example, they are going to research for a particular animals, okay, na kailangan nilang gawan ng research study. Next one is the habitat-specific tours. So, this focus on areas or regions rich in animal life. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, for example, etong nasa picture, yung mga polar bears. So, if you want to see yung habitats ng polar bears, you can go to Arctic Ocean. Kaya naman, if you want to see yung mga wildlife animals, such as, for example, mga tigers, giraffe, zebra, you can go to South Africa. And the next one is the thrill offering tours. So, from the word itself, thrill. So, these are the dangerous animals. Okay? They are being enticed to engage in a spectacular behavior. Of course, for the viewing pleasure of the tourists. So, example nga po niyan yung nasa picture is the Subic Safari. Okay? So, sa Subic Safari, nagkakaroon tayo ng close encounter with the tigers. So, nakasakay kayo sa mini jeep na yan. And then, of course, may mga harang yan, may mga rehas. And then, pinapakain nyo ng chicken meat yung mga tigers. So, in that case, yung tigers lalapit sa mismong vehicle. And magkakaroon ng close interaction. Next one is this hunting or the fishing tours. So, in a natural, semi-captive of the farm environments where animals are killed or released back into the wild. So, yung iba naman, nag-hunt sila or nag-fishing tours, okay? Dahil gusto nilang makakuha ng iba't ibang klaseng, let's say, marine creatures. Yan, for example, yung mga fish. Okay? So, pwede nila itong patayin o kaya naman i-release din sa wildlife. Kaya lang, syempre, yung mga governments, meron pa rin silang mga protocols, okay? Meron pa rin mga rules and regulation when it comes to hunting and fishing tours na dapat sundin ng mga turista. Next one is the adventure tourism. So, ano ba yung tinatawag na adventure tourism? So, I know all of you are popular, okay? I know all of you are really informed about the so-called adventure travel. So, it says here that another closely related form of tourism to ecotourism is the adventure travel, which in some circles is felt to subsume ecotourism. So, sabi dito, according to Tourism Canada, they have defined ecotourism or adventure tourism rather as an outdoor leisure to activity that takes place in unusual, exotic, remote, or wilderness destination which involves some form of the what we called unconventional means of transportation and tends to be associated with low or high levels of activities. So, si adventure tourism, according kay Tourism Canada, these are the activities na ginagawa natin outside. And usually, itong mga activities na to pwedeng ganapin in a unusual, exotic, remote, or even wilderness destination. And of course, when we conduct such kind of activities, we are going to use yung mga unconventional transportation. Ibig sabihin, yung mga transportation services na hindi natin usually ginagamit. Okay? And of course, merong high or low level ng activities and risk si adventure tourism. Next one is the list of adventure travel activities. So, according to Canadian Tourism Commission, so there are lists of adventure travel activities. The nature observation, the wildlife viewing, the water adventure products, the land adventure products, the winter adventure products, and the air adventure products. So, I know all of these kinds of travel activities are familiar to you as discussed last semester. So, next one is, there is a flow that includes the number of the main elements as defined by this kind of person. So, hindi ko nasasabihin yung kanyang pangalan because as you can see in the screen, medyo mahirap i-pronounce yung kanyang name. So, ano daw ba yung mga elements na involved kay adventure tourism? Of course, there is a total immersion into the activity. Alam naman po natin yan na kapag tayo is gagawa, okay, or let's say makaka-experience ng iba't ibang mga adventures, talaga namang we are totally immersed. Okay? We are totally attached doon sa activity. Meron talaga tayong 100% involvement. It enhances the concentration. Of course, dapat focus ka sa ginagawa mo. Kasi ang adventure tourism, meron siyang low or high risk, okay, na pwedeng maranasan ng mga turista. Actions directed at fulfilling the goal. Of course, meron tayong particular goal kung bakit natin gustong ma-achieve yung particular activity. The activity requires skills and challenge. So, bago ka naman sumalang sa particular adventure activity, so sinasabi naman kung ano yung mga dapat at hindi mo dapat gawin. Okay? Para nang sa ganon, malesen natin yung mga aksidente. Flow involves control, of course, and of course, a sense of transcendentalism. So, sinasabi lang dito sa number or sa pang-anim na element is dapat meron tayong sense of oneness with the surrounding or objects involved in the experience is being felt. Ibig sabihin, in a current situation, nararamdaman natin yung nangyayari sa surroundings natin. Ibig sabihin, nagkakaroon tayo ng involvement doon sa particular situation at nagkakaroon din tayo, of course, ng memorable experience. And of course, a loss of time. So dahil sa sobrang immersed tayo, attached tayo sa activity, hindi na natin namamalayan yung oras. Because another thing is masyado tayong nag-e-enjoy. Okay? Masyado yung excitement o yung adrenaline rush natin during a particular activity. Next one is, according to Quinn, adventure lies deep within the spiritual, emotional, intellectual, and objective spheres of humanity, and is the internal seduction of the hidden. So more specifically, Quinn argues that adventure is a desire for a condition that is absent within the individual. So ibig sabihin, kaya nga tayo nagpa-participate, kaya nga tayo jumo-join sa mga adventure activities, it's because we want something new. Okay? We want something new na hindi na natin or hindi pa natin nararanasan before. But according to the figure here, there are levels of risk sa mga tour packages na kukunin natin. So we have here the soft adventure. Okay? We have here the soft adventure, the adventure, and the high adventure. So, yung tatlo na yon tinatawag natin is the adventure level. At yung adventure level na yon, meron siyang karampatan na risk. So, yung risk na yon, it can be low risk up to high risk. So, ibig sabihin, for example, si soft adventure. Ito usually yung mga adventure o yung mga activities na sightseeing lang siya, observation, okay? Na wherein, wala naman tayong masyadong risk na pwedeng makuha. Wala namang masyadong mga accidents na pwedeng mangyari. So, si adventure or the middle adventure, okay? So, ito naman yung mga medium risk lang. Yung pwede natin na ma-experience. So, example nga po niyan is yung trekking, raft trip, okay? Volcano climb, or yung Salmon River, o yung paglalayag lang natin, for example. And next one is yung high adventure. So, pag sinabing high adventure, ito na yung mataas yung risk. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, ito na yung kailangan talaga natin magdoble ingat. Kailangan natin sundin yung proper protocol sa particular kind of activity. Okay? Kasi, dito sa high adventure, it's life or death. Okay? Ibig sabihin, baka naman kapag hindi nag-ingat si tourist, hindi siya masyadong na-inform, or hindi siya sumunod sa protocol na sinasabi ng tour guide, ibig sabihin, pwede siyang magkaroon ng accident. Okay? Pwede siyang maaksidente or else, pwede pang mamatay yung turista. Kaya nga siya sinabing high adventure at meron din siyang high risk. So, those are the levels of risk in tour packages. Next one is the ACE tourism. So, ano ba yung sinasabi natin na ACE tourism? So, given the foregoing discussion on the adventure tourism and its many variants, the concept of ACE tourism is developed to illustrate the evolving relationship between three distinct but related nature-based tourism products. So ano-ano ba yung involved kay ACE Tourism? So from the acronym itself, there is Adventure Tourism, stands for letter A. We have the Cultural Tourism for the letter C, and the Ecotourism for the letter E. So ibig sabihin lang dito, according to the figure 2.4 or the tourism activity spectrum, okay, there is an overlapping between the three kinds of tourism. So si ecotourism, pwede siya kay adventure travel, pwede rin siya kay tour travel. But of course, sabi din, meron tayong mga unexpected results and risk pagdating kay adventure travel. Okay? So, yung safetyness natin is mas mataas yung tendency niya pagdating kay ecotourism at kay tour travel. But of course, from tour travel to adventure tourism, dapat meron daw increased preparation and training. Okay? Lalong-lalo na sa mga employees na involved doon sa particular activity. And of course, doon mismo sa mga turista. Dapat they are well-informed about the preparation, yung mga skills na dapat nilang i-perform during a particular activity. So, that is the tourism activity spectrum. Next one is the ACE tourism. So as you can see in the figure 2.5, the changing face of ecotourism. So as mentioned a while ago, that three kinds of distinct tourism, okay, so lahat sila is nag-overlap. Within ecotourism, andun din si culture tourism. Within adventure tourism, andun din si ecotourism or si cultural tourism. Next one is the type of ecotourist. So, sino-sino ba yung mga tinatawag natin na ecotourist? Ano ba yung kanilang mga iba't ibang description or ano-ano ba yung iba't ibang masasabi natin na katangian ng mga ecotourists na to? So number one is the do-it-yourself ecotourist o yung tinatawag natin na DIY ecotourist. So it says here, despite of the relative anonymity, this group comprises the largest percentage of all ecotourists. Ibig sabihin, sa tatlong klase ng ecotourists, sila yung pinakamadami. Okay? Bakit? Because there are the type of tourists na they have a high degree of flexibility. Flexible sila sa lahat ng bagay na gagawin during the tour. So sabi dito, they can even book a different types of accommodation and have the mobility to visit any number of settings. So, ibig sabihin, as you can see in the picture, merong tourist na nagbo-bonfire, may mga tourist naman na nag-set up sila ng kanilang mga camping tents. So, ibig sabihin, si do-it-yourself ecotourist, they can do several things. Okay? And of course, they can experience several things depende dun sa mga activities na gagawin nila. Next one is the ecotourist on tours. So from the word itself, they have a high degree of organization within their tour. So in this case, meron na silang binook na mga travel agency, okay? So sa travel agency, nag-book na sila doon ng mga tour packages o kaya naman kay tour operator. So itong mga ecotourists on tours, their travel time is really organized. Okay? Yung mga activities na gagawin nila, yung mga locations na bibisitahin nila within a particular area, is lahat yun naka-organize. Or meron silang tinatawag na travel itinerary. So most likely, they travel to exotic destination. Okay? So lahat ng ito is merong guidance ng tour operator or ng travel agent at ng tour guide. And the last type of ecotourist is yung tinatawag na school groups or the scientific groups. So from the word itself, there is an involvement of the scientific research. It may be an organization or for individual. So sabi dito, itong mga scientific groups na to or yung mga school groups na to, they can stay, okay, they can stay longer in a particular destination or sa particular na ecotourist site. Because, so sabi dito, they can endure a harsher site condition than any other ecotourist. So dahil nga nagkakaroon sila ng study, nagko-conduct sila ng study or research, malamang mas matagal talaga sila na magstay sa particular ecotourist sites. Okay? So remember, there are 3 types of ecotourists. We have the do-it-yourself ecotourist, the ecotourist on tours, and of course, the school group or the scientific group of ecotourists. So that concludes our Lesson 1.2, which is the Ecotourism and Ecotourists. So if ever you miss a certain points in our lesson video, feel free to rewatch, okay? Replay this lesson video in YouTube, or even you can download the lesson video for further references. So again, this is Ma'am Ara Venise Ocampo. Thank you for listening and watching our lesson video for today. See you on our next lesson. Thank you and goodbye.